Hey, and welcome to another Revit video. And in this video, we're going to look at topography, like basically creating topography using a CAD file, and then placing it like at the right elevation, which, my gosh, CAD files, all of that, I'm sorry to have to inconvenience you with CAD files, but my guess is that you have and probably will once again be very inconvenienced with CAD files, specifically for topography, and that's what this video is for. But before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, or maybe just like the video, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out quite a lot. Okay, getting into it now. I'm in a blank Revit template. There's just nothing here, and we want to start with a CAD file. Obviously, you know, if I haven't told you how I feel about CAD files, you should get an idea of how I feel about them based on this video. I don't like them. I don't like having to deal with them. The fact is we kind of have to, chances are you will have to for the purposes of creating topography. And honestly, it's not that difficult. It's more of locating it correctly and getting the right settings and knowing how to do that to make it so your life is not as hellish as it normally would be with other CAD files. Okay, so let's go to the Insert tab, and then CAD. I'm just going to use, I've got just a basic topography here. I've got two versions of it, but we're going to start with the first one, and I'll show you why I have two versions of it. But it's just generic site. I pulled it from somewhere on the internet, and I've got a few settings here, and most of this I don't care about, but one thing I do care about is this is going to be an auto detect. I want this to be in feet. 9 times out of 10, it's going to need to be in feet because it's going to come in and auto detect to inches for some reason. I don't know why, but it's going to need to be feet because, well, Revit's in feet. That is exactly why. And the next thing is this is probably going to be auto center to center, and especially if you've not done any sort of shared coordinates or you haven't set a location in Revit, like I've done none of that, and maybe you haven't done that. Not that that particularly matters because there's a lot that goes into getting things located correctly. So what I've had the most success with is just simply doing manual. And manual origin center doesn't matter. If you know where the origin is, as in you've looked at the CAD file and seen where the XY meets, then great, use origin. But I think center is great because it's going to give you the center of the content and you can place it wherever you want. Now, this is kind of important. Place at level 1. Well, this is the other half of this video is going to be where we put this in elevation. And you know, the first settings that we have is based on the level. In this case, I have level 1 and 2 by default, so I probably want this at level 1, sure. Orient view is not going to do but as much as you want it to do, and of course I would correct lines that are slightly off axis, sure. You know, these are things you won't notice, but things that are nice to do. So with mainly feet and manual, probably center, we can click open. And with that, we get this CAD file. And I have gone to the immense trouble of cleaning this up for you so you know your lives are not ruined like mine. So here we go. I'm going to place this, and you can see I'm literally in the center of the content, which is, you know, just the center of my CAD file, and I'm placing it. I'm actually placing it on level 1, and now again we'll have to determine where we're happy with that because I don't know. It's going to really depend on what we want, where we want level 1 to be corresponding to on the site, whatever. So all this. So I'm going to place it wherever. So I don't care. That's fine. Maybe you would care, but honestly, for what we're doing here, this doesn't matter where you put it because we can ultimately put it where we want. And then we'll get to that as well. So with this place, you can see like we're not at level 1. So these are things that we can address later on. This is obviously high. My guess is 100 feet higher. I don't know if the civil engineer accounted for level 1 being at 100 instead of 0, whatever, you know, all of this. This is not a huge deal. So we want to make topography. We don't want to deal with CAD files, and that's what we have, unfortunately. So what I have here is if I check these layers, is I've got these gray, which is going to be, it's whatever layer it is, and that's fine. But the layer, we need to pay attention to the layer because we want to make sure we choose the right layers for making our topography. So this one is VTopo minor. And so the gray dash is going to be the existing. And then we've got all of these other lines. I think the green is major lines, and then the gold is minor lines, yeah. So we can use this to make essentially 2 topographies that will go together. And now what I'm going to do is now go to the massing and site, and we want to click on topo surface. we're going to get in here, and at this point, this is where it's honestly really easy, and it's not too bad. So we're going to go to create from import, because this is what this is. It's an import, a CAD import, and then we're going to select import instance. We don't have a point file or anything like that. Even though this does hold points, we want to just select the import instance. And now we need to actually select this, and you can see as I hover over it, I get the selection. So I'll click on it, boom. And so once again, we need to have been familiar with the layers, which it's all unfortunate that we have to do this, but we have to. So looking at this now, we want to check none, and you know, these maybe you have to go back to the CAD file, but like we just did, we can query this beforehand, and we can see where these layers are and which ones we need. Well, I know I need the V layers because that will give me my existing. So I'm going to choose those, and then I'll click OK, and then I don't see anything, and then I'm going to hit the green check mark, and then we get this lovely error. You know, just love errors. The surface must have at least 3 distinct points. Well, this is confusing because I know my topography, well, I know my CAD file has a bunch of different lines and segments and whatever. And so why are we getting this error? Well, we're getting this error because while it looks as though if we query all of these lines that they are just a single polyline, if we were to go into the CAD file itself, which I actually don't have CAD right now, if we were to go into it, we could see that all of these gray lines, whether they're this V topo minor or major, both of those layers, they're in one block, and they're all together, and they select as one unit, one block in the CAD file. And Revit can't read that because it's looking for multiple polylines that each have its own set of points along the line to create a topography. And basically what we just told Revit is use one block with, I mean, this whole block has, it's not being read as individual lines, so it's just kind of one static unit, and which is why it's telling us, oh, you need more points. You need at least 3. So that won't work. So what the heck? Well, that's where my edited file comes into play. So I'm actually going to delete this, and then I'm going to go again back to Insert, Link CAD, and I'm going to use this topography edited. And so all I've done, and because I can't show you this right now, all I've done in this topography file is I've clicked those gray lines or whatever layer you want that has all the lines selecting as one, and I've selected that one block, and then I've typed explode and press enter. So I literally explode the block. And so what I'm left with is each one of the polylines within the existing topography now select as individual polylines instead of one giant block where they all select. Easy. So again, I want to make sure my import is feet, and then my positioning manual, sure. Okay, and again, we're going to place the same thing, Danny, right there. Okay, so this, right now, it looks the same. It acts the same. Everything is essentially the same. But now, my guess is, or at least I hope so, creating the topography will work. So again, topo surface, create from import, select import instance. I'll select this, and check none. I would just want my major and minor V topography layers. So I'll click OK. And then nice, you know, I'm greeted with this immediately. So this is what we expected in the beginning, but all of those points, well, all of those polylines each have points between them, and so we're getting these points. And so whenever, this is one thing to remember, whenever you're exploding, you don't want to explode those individual polylines because each one of those lines, basically every, all the lines between these points, they can be, you can explode these single polylines into these individual lines, and you don't want to do that because then it will never work. You know, you want this single polyline. That's the best I can tell you. So great, this is cool. So with that done, we have our existing topography. Wonderful. You know, again, I'm not going to worry about elevation differences or, you know, all of this, because if I look at spot elevation, this is clearly really high, you know, and maybe I want this down. Whatever. Not a huge deal right now. We're going to deal with that later. So we have our existing. So once we have our existing, we need to make sure that this is existing because it's existing. So let's go over here to our phase created and make sure this is existing. Awesome. So simple. We're not going into great detail with phasing. I have another video for that. Check it out. That's really helpful. But now we have our existing. Cool. That's easy. So basically what we're looking at here is we got a couple buildings here, and you know, I can tell you what's going to happen. I could tell you what's going to happen when we make this new topography, but I'm not going to tell you until after. So actually what we're going to do is I'm going to simply hide the existing topography that we just made because I want to now use the new. Okay, so let's come in here again to massing and site topography, import, and then select our CAD file, and I'm going to check now. Well, now we need to use the C major and minor. Cool. The rest are just labels and whatever crap we don't need. Okay, so let's select these. We'll click OK, and then we get this. Ooh, obviously it's different. First of all, it's in a condensed area. If we go to the top view, it's in a condensed area compared to the existing site, which I guess that's what you'd want, or at least in this case, it's what you want, because you might not be editing the whole site, or whatever. You want to just work within your site. In this case, this is probably within the property line or something like that. And so we have like 2 buildings, and so I'm going to just complete this, and so we've got it. Great. Don't care about that. And I'm just going to hide my CAD file just so we can see what we're looking at. And so I'll show it again in just a second. But what are we looking at here? Well, this is an absolute mess. And let me tell you why that's an absolute mess. Well, I should have left the CAD file because I want to show you the CAD file. So if we look at the CAD file compared to the topography, we can see that we have these lines that are literally following, I guess you'd call it a building pad, or like the edge of the building. And what Revit wants to do is create a point at every one of these like intersections, or like where you get a new line segment. So we've got a new line segment there, and then we've got a new line segment there, and then so it's trying to make this border. Well, if you're familiar with topography in Revit, there is something called building pad. It's literally a tool for making building pad. It's going to take an entire area, push it down or pull it up, and push and pull the earth based on that, and give you a flat or a constant slope area to work with. So I don't like it whenever I see civil engineers doing this, because it creates more hassle for us. So what I would have to do if I were going to fix this, and for the sake of this video, I will not, so I apologize for that. But if I were going to, what I would do is, if we come to a top view here, I would basically take this 630 line, and I'd find it on one side, and I'd find it on the other. So here's 630, and so 631 is here, and the 631 is there. So basically what I would do is, instead of having this run all the way around the edge of the freaking building, I would literally take a new line segment from this point here to this point here, where this 631 meets the edge of the building. And so I'd have a new line segment. And so what I'd have to do is explode these lines and make it so this entire 631 is one constant polyline again. So basically what I would get is, the idea is that I am artificially not necessarily incorrectly, but I'm altering that in such a way to where I get these nice smooth topography lines again, and I'm not actually impacting the grades within a building, because what I'm going to do is come back, and then whenever I have it in Revit, and then push the building, like literally place the building in the topography with the building pad tool. And so what we're seeing here is just this mess. And the reason I would do that is because we get these odd triangulations. Topography is all based on the triangulation of the points. And so we have these ridiculous triangulations that wouldn't actually exist, and I know the civil engineer does not want these to exist. So this is not smooth at all, because I'm getting these like jagged edges off to the side, and plus, like, I can't create a true retaining wall, as in like go vertically, like exactly vertically with Revit topography. This is the result, and it's unfortunate. So ultimately what would happen is that we get these nice grades over here that would continue all the way across the building and meet at what the grades are supposed to be on the other side, and then I'd have my building pad and push it down. So with all that, we don't care about it. That's just something I hope you don't have to do. If you do, I'm sorry, but there are ways around dealing with that. Okay, so what we have now is we have our new and our existing topography. Cool. So obviously there is some overlap here on the edges, which is what we'd expect. That's kind of nice to see, because that means our new is meeting the existing quite well. That's, again, that's project or site specific, it's engineering specific, who knows? And that's just what we have here. So what are we going to do now? Well, let's say if we come back to a top view here, and we show this, maybe we decide that we want this 630 line to be our level, our 0, like level 1. What do we do here? Well, I mean, let's go ahead and I'll show you. We put a spot elevation down. We're going to get just all over the place. I can get close to 630 over here. Obviously, if I get on top of the line, I can locate 630. Wonderful. what do we do then? I mean, like, how do we get this exactly down to 0? Well, it's a bit complicated. And so what are we going to do? Well, we need to literally move it down. Well, I can, knowing that this is 630 from here, I can simply move the whole thing down, 630 feet. In some cases, that's enough. Maybe you have level 1 set at 100 and not 0. That's up to you. But we can literally come down here, and we can simply just move this down 630 feet. That was simple. And so now what happens is we have our 0. And so, like, it is that easy. What a lot of times I see is, let's go ahead and undo this. What a lot of times I see is this topography will come in up here, but they've gone to the trouble, and whether it's trouble or not, beats me. Someone has gone to set the site as far as like the actual location. So if we wanted we can show the project base point, the survey point, all this kind of stuff. So this kind of information has been updated. And so maybe we decide, like the site's actually going to be located in a different place. Like, well, okay. I mean, if we were going to do that, we can use the relocate site tool. We could do all this kind of stuff. But we could also just move it up and forget all precision, but we don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and make our elevation 100. So if we do that, immediately what happens here is that we get these levels that are now at -100 and -90. They didn't move. So we just need to simply reset these to 10 and 0. And what we get is now level 1 is at 0 again, but we have our site here, which is technically at the 100. And so what ultimately happens is if we come up to the top here, again, if we're going to look at this, we're now at 530. And so, this is just a mess. My head is hurting. So basically what we did is we used that relocate site tool. What we actually updated that within the project base point instead. So like it all works the same. But what I see a lot of times is maybe this elevation is not actually 100. Maybe it's 0. And now clearly we have, I see this a lot where level 1 is at 100. Okay, great. I mean, it's just changing things vertically. And the idea here is that we avoid moving the whole freaking model up or down. That's what we want to avoid. I have another video on relocating the building, relocating, like with the actual relocate tool, because that's relocating the project, because it's really important that's correct. So we have position, and then we can relocate the project and all this kind of, like, that's something separate, but we can manipulate that in those settings with the elevation here if we're just talking about up and down. So with the project base point. So cool. Maybe we decide, yeah, we do want level 1 at 100. And then what happens over here is we still have this at 630. Well, again, it's simple math. I can take this, I can drag this over here, boom, drag this down. Instead of 630, I'm going to move it down 530. So coming over here, I can see, hey, look at this. There's my level 100. It's at level 1. I'm good to go. I'm like, that's it. That's not hard. And so the other thing I can tell you is this is just kind of a trial and error thing, and it's all based on the luck of importing things. And I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. If I unhide my CAD file, this is what I'm going to end up using to locate my building, like on the X and Y axis. Like I just moved everything on the Z axis, but hopefully you can take this CAD file. Now, I guess what I can do is copy the CAD file. If I copy this over here, the idea is that before you even make the topography, that this CAD is located based on other things on your site. And that's why we want to import this manually, or link it manually and place it manually, because we can put it where we want, and typically I just throw it somewhere, and then I'm going to use a known point, maybe it is literally the edge of the building, and align it to wherever my edge of the building is. So then I have this located where I need to, at least X and Y. Then if it's floating 100 million feet in the air like it is right here, I can make my topography and then just move things up or down vertically, like the topography only. And so once I've dealt with that, it's really simple to locate it. I mean, and then I'm done, basically. I translate X and Y with the CAD file, then I make the topographies, and then I move that down based on elevations that I know I need to hit. That's it. It's simple. That you've 100% located your hopefully more beautiful topography than this perfectly. I mean, you've got it perfect. Now, the only thing I can say is, and this is going to be the saddest closing statement and argument ever, but your CAD files are going to be very different. I went to the trouble of cleaning this up, and you could see, based on what I have here, I should have cleaned this up more. I should have taken those lines across, but I didn't. That type of thing. There will be some cleanup that you might have to do. Something I'd recommend is maybe if you can get like an overall site place, like site CAD file placed, then you have a separate, maybe save it, copy it, whatever, and just work on the topography lines and like only have that in a separate file. And then you just locate that based on where the CAD file is that you have already for the overall site, and then you can make your topography and move it down from there. Like, all of that can be done pretty simply, and so maybe to reduce headaches, you end up doing the topography in a separate CAD file. That's up to you. Again, it's going to be based on the luck that you have with the civil engineer, whoever's doing the survey, the CAD file, anything like that, and then how they set it up, and then whether you need to explode things or not. Just there's a lot that you need to keep in mind when you're doing these things, but at the end of the day, the process is very simple, and you should be able to locate your brand new topography, X and Y, and not only X and Y, but Z as well, pretty simply. And not only simply, but we did it. We were able to do it and confirm that 100% perfectly. We can do that. So that will do it for this video. In a future video, I'm going to take this topography and really integrate it with this existing, because if you notice, we do have this like overlapping, and we don't want this at all. We don't want this presented that way at all. So I'm going to save that for another video. Just be sure to come back for that, because we're not done with this topography. We need to actually edit the existing out. Basically, the new that meets the existing, we need to get the existing portion out. So we need to trim it a bit. And unfortunately, it's not as simple as just going to the trim topography and splitting it. Ultimately, that might be part of it, but there can be a lot more to it based on your CAD file. So again, that will do it for this video. We located topography perfectly. And that was just based on my CAD file. These should be the same tactics that you try to use with yours. Obviously, if you can't, I am sorry, but leave those in the comments. I'll be happy to help, and should be able to get you pretty close from this video or the comments. So again, that will do it for this video. Have a wonderful day. If you happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It helps me out a lot. Yeah, that's it. That will do it. I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.